Described today by so many news publications as the star of Murder, She Wrote. And indeed she was, but she was so much more than that. Her career spanned 80 years. As a teenager, she got her start in radio dramas. Then after moving to the US from her native Britain, caught the eye of a Hollywood executive and never looked back. She won a Lifetime Achievement Oscar in 2013, won a slew of Tony Awards for roles in musicals and dramatic theatre on Broadway. In an appearance at the American Film Institute, she recalled being selected to play the role of the singing teapot Mrs. Potts in the 1991 Walt Disney version of Beauty and the Beast.
I mean, this was the best. You can imagine what a thrill it was for me to be hailed as a lovable little singing teapot after years of playing some pretty despicable characters. I mean, children no longer hid behind their mother's skirts when I came around, and they approached me in the aisles of supermarkets, whispering, "Mom, it's Mrs. Potts." You know, I was suddenly a heroine.
And, of course, she was a heroine in Murder, She Wrote. Angela Lansbury, dead at the age of 96. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, the White House has focused on the threats posed by China and Russia in its newly released national security strategy. A US jury has begun deliberations on the fate of the gunman responsible for the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida. And scientists at Stanford School of Medicine have successfully transplanted human brain tissue into rats. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
In a competitive tech world, companies are always looking to the latest trend to keep their employees productive and happy at the office. But a new study suggests that employees are actually happiest when they're simply pretending to work from home. The study from tech and consulting giant IBM found employees felt overall more focused and content with their jobs when doing personal tasks like catching up on laundry or their favorite TV shows when they should be working.
I just make sure that I send some emails to my supervisor first thing in the morning so he thinks I'm up and working, but then I just go right back to bed.
I never have to deal with rush hour traffic or anything. I just walk across the room, sit down at my desk, and start browsing through my Twitter feed immediately.
The trend is making its way to the country's most influential tech companies like Google, where employees are encouraged to put in 12 empty hours of work a week from their homes. The study hasn't swayed every company, however. Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer said in a statement, "At Yahoo, we prefer that our employees pretend to work side by side right here in our offices."
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, a Wednesday edition of the program, and as always, you are invited to join us, 603-283-6160, if you'd like to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. If you want to call in, you can talk about whatever you want, whatever is happening in the news. I haven't paid a lot of attention to today because I had so much interesting stuff from yesterday that I really wanted to get into, and I knew that if I found more interesting stuff today, then, I wouldn't get to the interesting stuff from yesterday. 603-283-6160. With you today, it is Aria.
It's Nikki. And Bonnie.
It's been a while since I've been here on Wednesdays. I've just been Wednesdays has been kind of a weird day for me lately. So it's good to be back. Coming up, we're going to be talking about how 1 in 6 people, actually I think I want to lead off with this, 1 in 6 people are stressed as soon as they wake up. Also, Elon Musk, Ukraine seems to want him to install Starlink in Crimea, or Crimea, however the hell it's pronounced. I'm going to alternate between the two, so go ahead and get used to it. And if you feel like correcting me, go ahead and do that. I don't really care. More interestingly about the Ukraine-Russia thing going on right now is that, and this is also going to be coming up, the United Nations wants to have a vote about whether or not it should condemn Russia's actions in Ukraine. And what's interesting to me about this is that Russia wanted it to be a secret vote where you didn't know who voted, yes and who voted no on whether or not to condemn the behavior.
That is interesting, because why wouldn't they want to know who was condemning them and who wasn't?
But in actuality, they wanted it to be a secret vote, and I kind of like that. You're more likely to find out what someone really thinks.
Yeah, if it's anonymous, you're more likely to tell the truth.
Yeah, but these other nations, maybe Kazakhstan or whatever, is afraid to tell Russia, look, we don't think this is right what you're doing. So this secret vote that they would have allowed them to truly express themselves. However, the United Nations has voted that it should be an open vote and that it should be held out in the public and everyone's name should be attached to it. That's coming up. Also, the United States Navy has been unleashed jet fuel in the water in Hawaii, and the FBI has been counting the number of citizens who stop underage shootings. I don't know exactly how they count this statistic, but they do evidently count it.
Well, not underage shootings.
I'm sorry. What did I say?
You said underage shootings, but
Okay.
It's just mass shootings or active shooters.
Yeah, I don't know what an underage shooting would even be. The phone was ringing and that distracted me a bit. But they count the number of shootings that there are in the United States, and they count how many armed citizens put a stop to those mass shootings. And they've been undercounting. Maybe that's where the underage thing came from. They've been undercounting how often American citizens who are armed put a stop to mass shootings.
Well, when that happens, you rarely even hear about it.
You do.
You only hear about like the school shootings where it was very, tragic and a bunch of people died. You never hear about a good story where someone came into a store or something with ill intentions to shoot a bunch of people and they were stopped. You never hear about that.
Speaking of that, about Uvalde, did you guys hear that there was a cop that was on camera? The camera just came out, or the video just came out of that cop saying, yeah, my kid's in preschool. He's not old enough. So if my kid was in there, there's no way I would have stayed outside.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, nobody else's kids matter.
Yep.
That's terrible.
It's really
and
terrible.
Even like the video of the cop on his phone, like playing games. I don't know, anyone in their right mind, especially if they're a police officer and they're supposed to be protecting the public, anyone in their right minds, even a civilian, would try to stop it.
And not only did they not really help trying to stop it, but they also actively stopped parents who wouldn't have stayed out, didn't want to stay outside. Like that guy said he wouldn't have stayed outside if his kid was in there. They actively stopped parents from going inside.
They tried to, they at least detained that one parent who tried to rush in. And then after they detained her, once she was free from police custody, she ran around the back and broke in and saved her children. People shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to trust the police, but as we have seen on numerous occasions, you can't trust the police.
No, the police are, they're always investigating, first of all. So you can't trust them in individual interactions that you may have with them. But that aside, you can't trust them to actually go out there and do what's right because they have no obligation to protect, first of all. And this has been well established by Supreme Courts throughout the United States. At the state level and I think at the federal level. I know at least at the state level. And, I can't say that I blame them in a lot of cases. I don't think that cowardice is necessary, or I don't want to call it cowardice. Self-preservation, the desire to save oneself over sacrificing oneself to save someone else is necessarily a bad thing. So I can't say, look, if I was at a school and there was some school shooter there, I can't say with any amount of truth that I would put my life on the line in order to put a stop to the school shooter.
But I think if someone's a police officer, they should have that mentality. Look at firefighters. They literally rush into burning buildings that are collapsing to save people and put out the fire. So I think in these lines of work, you should have a certain sense of, trying to serve the greater good or whatever it might be.
Because we don't have any options between people who are supposed to do jobs like that, there's just no reason for anybody to actually do a good job at doing that. So people who apply, they're the same people that say things like, oh, I'm not going to work at, a place that gets robbed, like a gas station. I'm not going to work at a gas station. Those places get robbed. The same type of people are going to apply for, that's like the general public, and most people are like that.
I certainly agree with that, right? I would not... For many reasons, I would not become a police officer. But even if police officers were actually doing good things and they were known to be moral, upstanding people, and, it was all they did was keep people safe from violent aggressors, I think we should hold police responsible for intervening when someone's life is in danger like that. And I wouldn't enter that field, just like I wouldn't become a firefighter and all of this other stuff. So very good points there. I don't have a good solution, though. I don't know that if a police officer actually had to put their life on the line in order to, do their job, would there even be police officers?
I think there'd be some, but just not a lot. I mean, people joined the military and firefighters, like you said.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some police officers out there who have genuine intentions and really did join the force to help people and are, very selfless people. But I think the numbers of police officers that are like that are dwindling nowadays. I think it's gotten really bad. And I think a lot of the police officers who had that mentality and who were more interested in serving the public over whatever their police force or whatever, the government, those people are getting fired.
Yeah, they certainly are. It's amazing to me how much the understanding of police officers and just this entire system has changed over the years. And democracy and the Republican government, they all seem to be sort of to blame for this, but it used to be well known that the king raised taxes not to pay for your roads or whatever. It was to pay for his armies and to make himself richer and all of that stuff. But somewhere along the way, humanity forgot that. And we bought into this mythology that we pay taxes because the king will take care of us. The king is going to give us public schools and all of this other stuff. And sure, the king does that. But that's just being done to placate us. And it's extremely terrible service. It's absolutely awful quality. The school system is the worst public school. It's the worst education system. I think if you tried to come up with a worse way of educating children, you wouldn't be able to do it. And don't even get me started on the roads and the sheer number of potholes that exist all throughout New Hampshire. And here in Keene, which is a liberal bastion in New Hampshire that charges massive amounts of money in property taxes. But that's because taxes aren't really for any of that. It's just to exert control, and it's to make politicians richer and wealthier.
They spend way more money on defense than is needed to literally just end poverty.
Absolutely. 603-283-6160 if you want to join the conversations tonight. 603-283-6160. Coming up, why are 1 in 6 people stressed as soon as they wake up? It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
because we are smothering in spam, please do not reply to all when you can instead reply. I was recently among over 100 invited to a corporate reunion. It's always a warm affair, and that's the problem. Enthusiasm for our upcoming get-together caused many recipients to RSVP the organizer with a cheery reply to all. I can't wait. Then others piled on with a reply to all to that. Then the "I'm out of my office now" autoresponders joined in. So I replied to all, asking that we all reply only to the organizer. Hey, at least I tried. One invitee, apparently retired, shot back, "Point taken, but I really like seeing the responses since they're so positive." Smiley face. This better be an open bar. From survivalspeech.com, I'm Holland Cook.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves. You can talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And coming up, we're going to be talking about the FBI and how they count citizens. I keep wanting to say, every time I look at this, I want to say underage shootings for some reason. We're going to talk about how the FBI counts armed shootings. Obviously, they're armed if they're shootings in the United States. And Hawaii having an issue with jet fuel being in their water as a result of the U.S. Navy. However, first, 1 in 6 adults feel stressed the moment they wake up. And I can't imagine living that way.
Yeah, I do not feel stressed when I wake up. Sometimes, the only thing I will say, if I have to do something in the morning, sometimes I'll wake up in a panic, oh my gosh, I'm late.
Yep.
But that's really the only thing.
That's true.
And I mean, that's different, right? And once you orient yourself and you realize that you're not, once you wake up completely and you realize that you're not late, that goes away.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what they're talking about here. They say the majority of us wake up feeling stressed. The majority. What? That's not
what 1
they,
in 6 wouldn't be the majority, right?
It would not be
Is my math
majority.
incorrect here?
No, 1 in 6 adults feel stressed the moment they wake up. And they immediately then say, the majority of us wake up feeling stressed.
I don't.
I don't, whatever. I don't think they know how math works. Anyway, and take an average of 33 minutes before finally feeling human, according to a new survey. Now, I wake up, I wouldn't say I feel human, whatever that means when I first wake up, but I'm not stressed. I have sleep apnea. So when I wake up, I want to go back to sleep. I don't feel rested. I'm groggy. I'm usually some degree of irritated. I just want to be left alone. I just want to lay there and be left to suffer in existence for another half hour to an hour or so. But I'm not stressed when I'm doing it. I'm just like, God, I can't believe am I still alive? Why is this still happening? Respondents agree that brushing their teeth, eating breakfast, and downing a cup of coffee are an absolute must-do within the first 60 minutes.
Well, for me, it's not downing a cup of coffee like, oh, I just need to drink this to make me wake up. But I just have to have the ritual. Like, I have to. If Ian is talking to me a lot before I drink my coffee, like, I'm always just, like, rude. And it's like, I know what they mean by not feeling human until you're, like, 30 minutes have passed at least. But for me, it's usually, like, an hour. If I have to rush out the door to go do a thing and I don't get to drink sit there and drink my coffee, I'm just like, it throws off my whole day.
Well, and wouldn't you say you enjoy your cup of coffee? Like, you enjoy that time, not like, oh, I have to chug this coffee because, I have to do a bunch of stuff. And, I think if I worked day shift, I probably would wake up stressed. But where I can kind of spend the first portion of my day doing whatever I want.
See, I've done both day shift and night shift. I've even done some graveyard shifts, but generally I prefer swing shifts, which is that sort of thing where I can wake up and then I have my time to myself and I can do whatever I want.
So like 3 to 11?
Yeah, somewhere around there usually.
That's my least favorite.
Really?
Yes, because I feel like you don't get the day and you don't really even get the night.
I agree with that. I feel like second shift does kind of... It feels to me like it ruins my day, but working in restaurants where you go in at like 4 or 5 and then you leave, and I guess it's the same thing, but it just felt different to me doing that in restaurants than it did in healthcare.
See,
I don't know why.
I do agree that I tend to lose the day because I don't wake up until like noon or whatever, and then if 3 or 4 hours later I have to be at work, but then I have the entire night when everyone else is sleeping where I can be productive and do my own thing and there's no one really there to bother me. I can make music, I can play video games, I can watch whatever I want, and generally just be left alone. No one's texting me, no one's messaging me because everyone's asleep. And I like that. So I don't think it's fair to say that I don't still have the night. I still have the night and it's completely uninterrupted.
That's probably just a me thing because I don't get anything done if it's nighttime. I don't like being alive during the nighttime, and it's just never changed. It doesn't matter that now it's been like over a year of me staying up way later than I ever have before I met Ian. It doesn't change how I feel about it. Like I think people are naturally like a morning person or a night person, and even if you're forced to change your schedule, it just doesn't change. Like I'm just tired the whole night. All I can do is like sit around.
I think you're correct. I mean, some people, it takes all types, right? Some people are morning people, some people are afternoon people, some are evening people, and some are even, graveyard shift people. I was never able to do graveyard. I always felt tired anytime I had to do it. Just something about sleeping entirely during the day and then being awake all night. It didn't sit well with me. And by the same token, neither does being on a day shift schedule where I have to wake up at 6 o'clock or whatever ungodly hour and be in bed by 10 o'clock at night. I hate that sort of thing.
I love working third shift. I work third shift. I usually, even in my last job, I worked third shift, and it's just, I love it. I feel like management's not there to like look at me, and it's just more relaxed and calm, and kind of like what you were saying about how you like to do things during the night. I get to kind of do whatever I want, like nobody's texting me, nobody's bothering me. It's nice.
See, that's why I like second shift, because I get most of that, not all of it, because I usually go to bed around 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever. But I do get that where no one's bothering me and all of that. I'm just not at work during it.
Yeah.
But having a hot shower, catching up on the news, and making the bed are also other actions done first thing in the morning to get ready for the day. I don't understand. Do either of you make your bed when you first wake up?
No.
Matt makes the bed.
People actually do this then? Because I don't think I've ever met an adult that woke up and was like, all right, got my day started, time to make up my bed. Like, why? You're just going to go back to sleep in it in 15 hours.
Ian always makes our bed before we get in it at night. And
that doesn't make sense.
Well, he makes it sets it up to where
to stretch it out. Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean. It's in the right proportions. He doesn't fold things or push things under or anything like that. But me, before I met him, I would just climb into my blankets, unravel them, and get them on me.
That's what I do. And Matt's always like, oh my gosh, you can't sleep like this, and always has to straighten him out. And I'm like, no, just, it's whatever. Just, it's fine.
Ian's always saying, like, Bonnie, you don't have enough blankets, and, like, giving me more blankets. But I would just suffer through that in the night without him.
For many, however, there is no escaping the feeling of waking up on the wrong side of the bed. The study of 2,000 British adults conducted by one poll finds that 1 in 6 people feel stressed the moment they wake up.
That's so sad.
That is. This isn't always helped by the alarm, as of the 66% who set a timer to wake up, 51% deliberately use an aggressively loud tone to start the day. And you never want to do that.
No, I have music. I have different songs that are my alarms.
I think that's what people should do. And I think that I don't have the studies in front of me, but I read a long time ago, like when I was still in high school, that waking up to music you like puts you in a better mood to start your day than, some loud, obnoxious beeping or whatever people are waking up to. There's more coming up about this, and there's more coming up about Starlink and Crimea and how Elon Musk doesn't want to give them Starlink. 603-283-6160.
Free Talk Live.
There are certain cultures in the world that when they get up every day, the first thing they say is death to America. I don't know why. That's just how they feel about it.
Why do you think someone would be so angry, so dedicated, that they might be willing to sacrifice their own life to destroy the people of a country that are half a world away? Why do you think that would be?
Well, capitalism and our democratic system is counter to things that they believe in.
Has nothing to do with bombs being dropped on their countries?
Let's look at who started that. Are we supposed to not defend ourselves?
Wow. Do you think the world just
organizing globally to attack us?
Do you think the world started on 9/11? Do you really believe that the United States was the victim in this world conflict?
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The White House has focused on the threats posed by China and Russia in its newly released national security strategy. The Biden administration says the coming decade will be decisive for global challenges like competition between dominant world powers. A US jury has begun deliberations on the fate of the gunman responsible for the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida. The case is the deadliest mass shooting to reach a jury trial in the United States, as FSN's Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Nicholas Cruz has already pleaded guilty to the 17 counts of first-degree murder. Now the jury's job is to decide if he should get life in prison or the death penalty. Prosecutors have argued that when Cruz, who was 19 at the time, went to his former school to carry out what's the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history, it was a cold and calculated act. His defense lawyers said Cruz was mentally ill and brain damaged as a result of his mother using drugs and alcohol when she was pregnant. She asked the jury to show mercy, even though she admitted he did not have any for his victims.
Scientists at Stanford School of Medicine have successfully transplanted human brain tissue into rats. The experiment could help researchers better understand autism, schizophrenia, and other neurological conditions. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The experiment started 7 years ago when researchers began growing simplified human brain cells in the lab, then injected them into the brains of baby rats. According to their results, which were published in the journal Nature on Wednesday, the rats incorporated the human cells into their own brain tissue, which then seemed to guide the rats' movements. The researchers say the rats didn't show signs of health issues related to the experiment, and they hope further studies, which could use the brain cells from people with autism and other conditions, could help them better understand the biology underlying those disorders.
Business and economic data out on Wednesday suggests that inflation in the US shows few signs of cooling. Wholesale prices ticked up in September, despite the US Federal Reserve's efforts to cool rising costs. FSN's William Denslow reports from New York.
The producer price index ticked up 0.4% in September, exceeding the 0.2% rise many analysts had expected. This metric's a gauge on the price that companies in the US get for the services and products they make. Inflation in the US is currently up at around 40-year highs, with PPI now up 8.5% compared to a year ago. The Federal Reserve has raised interest rates 5 times already this year in a bid to curb price pressures. Analysts expect the Fed to again raise rates by 75 basis points at the central bank's next meeting in early November. The closely watched Consumer Price Index is due out on Thursday. William Denslow, New York.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you are invited to take control of the airwaves. You can talk about whatever you want. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And bullionmax.com/FTL. You can go there, and I think you can still get the employee discount on silver. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't looked at it in a few weeks, but anyway, bullionmax.com, that's where you can go to get silver and gold and all manner of other precious metals. And more recently, bullionmax.com has started selling the goldback. They have the Wyoming goldback for sale. They also have the New Hampshire's, the Utah's, and even the Nevada goldbacks. All of them currently in stock, but that could change at any time. It's an awesome website, and everything that you ordered there is insured during shipment, because you don't want to buy silver and gold and not have it be insured, right? Well, luckily, they actually insure their packages, and you can get a set of the Wyoming goldbacks for just around $400 for a full set. That's, I think, 10 of the ones, a 5, a 10, a 25, and a 50. They're absolutely beautiful pieces, and they are now available at bullionmax.com, which is great because acquiring goldbacks online has been sort of an issue over the last 2 years since the goldback really became popular, because initially it was only done through UPMA, the United Precious Metals Association, or something like that, and you had to wire them some money and have it credited to your account, and then you could use that money to buy. Here you can just use a debit card or credit card. So it's significantly easier now that they're available on bullionmax.com. And they're absolutely beautiful pieces of metal. I can't recommend I had pizza tonight at Little Zoe's, this little place here in Keene that accepts cryptocurrency and gold and silver. Well, I don't know if they accept silver. I'm sure they would if I, asked them to.
Yeah, because they understand that kind of stuff. They're not just the type of people taking goldbacks to just make us happy. They understand sound money and whatever.
Right. Well, they're at the Porcupine Freedom Festival each year. So, I mean, these are libertarians. They're cool people, and I was able to pay for my pizza tonight using goldbacks, and it's so hard to beat that. I don't think I've ever spent cash at this particular restaurant.
Hey, you don't have to.
Actually, I got to take that back. I have spent cash there. There was one time last year where I spent cash there because I couldn't use crypto, and they weren't yet accepting the goldback officially. They were taking it in tips, but they weren't allowing payment for it. But now they do. And as you point out, if you have gold or silver or cryptocurrency, then you don't have to use cash at some of these places here in Keene. And that's an amazing thing. So check it out, bullionmax.com, if you want an easy way to actually acquire the gold back. And they are absolutely beautiful pieces of art. And it is gold, right? The 25 gold back, I think, is my math sucks at the moment. It's a 40th or a 20th of an ounce of gold.
I can't do fractions. I had a bad math teacher in 5th grade. I just cannot do fractions.
I'll run next door and go grab one, and I'll tell you. It should say right on there.
It is a 40th. Yes, because the 50 is a 20th of an ounce of gold, and that gold is actually there woven into the bill. It's not backed by gold. It's not redeemable in gold. None of that crap. It is literal gold. And they're beautiful on top of it. So check that out, bullionmax.com. We're talking about people who are stressed here. And in the UK, it seems they may be feeling this a little bit more than they are in the United States. I don't know. This study was done on people in the United Kingdom. It was 2,000 British adults, and it found that 1 in 6 people feel stressed the moment they wake up.
You know what? I think I might feel stressed if I lived in the UK.
That's a fair point. I mean, yeah.
But I'm sure 1 in 6 Americans are stressed too. Just like interacting with people seem stressed out.
Yeah, the first people I thought of were my parents. Like, maybe not anymore now that my dad's retired and they're just kind of chilling with, doing whatever they want every day. But when we were all kids and my mom had a whole bunch of kids and my dad was going to work really early every day.
Yeah.
They probably were stressed out as soon as they woke up.
That's sad. I can't imagine living life like that. I mean, there have certainly been times in my life that I was more stressed out than others, but like even now where, I'm effectively working 2 jobs and I have a federal indictment hanging over me and, federal sentencing in just over 2 months, I'm not overly stressed out. I don't wake up stressed at all.
Well, it's a mindset, clearly. So if you're going through all that, I mean, that's some heavy stuff. And I think most people probably don't have to deal with, people are just dealing with work and family stress. So if you have those things going on and you don't appear to be stressed, I think it must be a mindset where people are just unable to filter through stuff and process their feelings and their emotions and their thoughts.
Well, one thing that is really interesting that you brought this up is today I was listening to a podcast that talks about lots of stuff, but one of the things that he's talking about right now is just the different parts of the brain and what they do and how people get imbalanced. And basically a lot of people are your lowest part of literal height wise, where it attaches to your neck of your brain.
Yeah, your brainstem?
The R complex, where it attaches to your brainstem, is the R complex. That's what...
You mean the lowest part of your brain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is what our animals have. Basically, it's really similar to a reptilian brain, and that's without that, you couldn't have your motor functions and things like that, just anything an animal can do, basically. And then your higher level thinking is all above that. And lots of people end up, on an EKG scan, the rest of the parts of their brains are dark, and that's the only part really lit up. Not most people, but a lot of people, because they're just, chronically imbalanced in the brain, and it just sounds to me like you would be... That's the part of the brain that has to do with, fight or flight. So lots of people that are chronically stressed out...
You mean the lower part of your brain?
Yeah, the R complex part of your brain. It's just the most ancient part of our brains, that developed first. And if we saw a gorilla and we needed to run away from it or whatever, that part of your brain is what does that stuff. And that's why a lot of people are just stressed out, because they don't know how to access the other parts of their brains. The limbic system is the emotional part. Lots of people just can't access that.
And that does make a lot of sense, because that's the fight or flight, and that controls your breathing and your heart rate and all stuff like that. So it makes sense that if people can't really regulate their brains within the neurons, it does make sense that people would be more stressed out and just unable to process that sort of stuff.
If you're trapped in that part of the brain is the part that if you're stressed out, it literally sends signals to your body to pump blood away from the brain and into the arms and legs. So your brain is chronically undernourished with blood, and lots of people just live in that condition.
I'm not terribly surprised to hear it. Thinking is not something the average person... And I don't want to sound arrogant about this, but the average person doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about things. They just sort of live and do. And this is why...
And want and buy.
Yeah, this is why Conan uses the term NPC. I don't like the term NPC because it sort of suggests that there's something that's permanently different between, us and everyone else. I don't think that's it. I think it's just... They have fallen into some sort of rut, some sort of trap that we happened to avoid. And this trap has them focused so much on Facebook and The Office and Game of Thrones and whatever else that's the most they're living is through these television shows, whereas we are actually putting thought into our lives and what we're doing and what our goals are. But, I'm sure they would sort of say the same thing. I don't know whether or not it's true or if I'm just, I feel like they're not really living their lives because I'm the one making that assessment.
Well,
and they would make the same assessment toward me. I don't know.
Most people, it seems like, just are completely ambivalent about what's going on in the world. And and my friends, a lot of my friends, do see what's going on. So it's like hard not to draw that conclusion that most people are just like stuck in this non-actual higher level thinking state.
What do you think? Are most people running around not thinking, just acting instinctively? 603-283-6160. Share your thoughts on the subject. It is Free Talk Live.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you're invited to control of the airwaves. You can join the show and talk about whatever is on your mind. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And if you don't want to be one of these nonsensical loser trolls chatting in YouTube or wherever people are chatting on our video chat servers, you should join our official chat server. Insofar as anything is official with Free Talk Live, this is our official chat server. You can find it at chat.freetalklive.com. It's a matrix server, which means that it's very similar to Discord, except there's no big tech company that you're beholden to who can delete your server or your channels or whatever. We could, I don't think even we can delete your channels and stuff like that. Well, we could nuke the server and stuff like that, obviously. So, but, you know, we're Free Talk Live. We don't do that kind of garbage. We don't believe in censorship here. So chat.freetalklive.com is way better than this YouTube nonsense where you have to watch what you say or YouTube will suspend you or kick you off or whatever. On our chat server, you can say whatever you want. That's chat.freetalklive.com. We're talking here about people who are stressed. Apparently, the average alarm in the United Kingdom is set for 7:10 a.m. each morning on a workday. And that's an early start, so why make it harder than it needs to be, says James Hemmings, who works at the company who commissioned the study, basically. 7:10 in the morning.
It sounds late. I would think people that are working during the day would get up earlier than that.
Really?
Doesn't work usually start at like 7 or 8?
That's true. I think most people would start work at like 9 in the morning. I think like the 9 to 5 thing.
Yeah, I guess.
Is what they call it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess then you would be waking up at 7.
There are days when I go to bed at 7, though. To wake up that early, that's horrifying.
I used to have to be at work at 7, and I had to be at work at like 6:30, and it was like an hour away because I didn't live inside San Antonio yet, and I was waking up at like 5:30 every day.
Nope.
And just the getting up and getting dressed part was horrible. But then once I was awake, I loved being awake that early, and leaving work at 3 and having the rest of the day, I love that. But the actual waking up part is very hard.
We know from our research that waking up the right way can have a huge impact on your day ahead, which is why we commissioned the British Academy of Sound Therapy and rapper Dialect. What?
What does that mean?
It's a rapper named Dialect.
Oh.
To help us create the best alarm sound yet. And it's at that point that you think this may be turning into a paid advertisement for some sort of new alarm system, but it's actually not, believe it or not. It's just a very strange thing for them to throw into this article.
Yeah, I thought you meant just like, we used the rapper dialect, like the way that rappers speak.
Well, I mean, it's unclear exactly what they meant, but it looks like what they're saying is that there is some rapper named Dialect, and he helped the British Academy of Sound Therapy create the best alarm sound yet. Now, I prefer not to set an alarm if I can help it. I'm going to wake up after I've had enough sleep, and my body knows when that is. So if I go to sleep at 4 or 5 in the morning, I'm usually going to wake up somewhere between 10 and noon. I don't know exactly when, and it's going to vary from day to day based on exactly how much sleep I need on a given time, but there's no need for me to set an alarm for, 12:30 in the afternoon, because I'm going to be awake by then anyway. But that said, I'm not on a schedule where I have to wake up and, immediately go to work. I don't want that sort of schedule. Some people do, like you mentioned. Some people want to go to work and get it over with, and then they have their entire day. I prefer to have part of my day before work and then, do the work thing, and then I have the entire night to myself. But everyone has different things.
This is all why I started doing Uber Eats. Like, I hated being confined to certain times of the day, not being allowed to do something at certain times of the day. Oh, I'm working at that time. So even whenever I would get a job, because I'd be like, oh, maybe I should have a real job, I would just always quit and go back to doing Uber Eats because I hated being like, oh, I can't hang out Friday. I have to work that day. I could just work another day instead.
The study also reveals that 39% of adults feel drowsy when they first get up, which sounds like me. I mean, I don't know if drowsy is the word I would use, but I certainly feel groggy, and I want to go back to sleep, but I'm never tired enough to go back to sleep. It's just more of a, man, I really wish I wasn't awake sort of thing. 30% admitted they feel like they never want to get out of bed. See, this is one of the things that I like having a dog for. I used to be one of these people where I would wake up and I would just sort of lay in bed for half an hour to an hour before I'd actually get up. Well, I have a dog now, and she doesn't let me do that. Yep. She knows when she hears me stirring that I'm awake. Yep. And she doesn't whine or bark or any of that stuff, but she will come over and put her head on the bed. She's not allowed on the bed, but she's the right height that her head can reach the mattress. And she'll put her head on the mattress and she'll just stare at me until I get up and take her out. Because, she's got to go to the potty, and she's been holding it for, 6 hours or whatever. So she's very patient about it, but I can't just lay there in bed because of that. And it's sort of a good thing. I would suggest to people who struggle to get out of bed, get a dog. If you actually have the sense of responsibility to take care of said dog. I suppose there's some people who are like, no, screw that dog. I'm just going to lay here for an hour anyway. Yeah. It's not even sleeping, because I could never go back to sleep. I just wanted to lay there and be lazy before I get my day started. Lazy's not the right word, but
relax.
Yeah. I would just like to lay there before I get my day started.
I was thinking I used to be like this, but it was only when I was like in high school, and I absolutely, with all like my cells in my being, didn't want to get up and go to high school or middle school, probably even.
Well, school sucks.
That's when I would just lay there, but
that's a different thing entirely, right? I don't want to get up and, go play guitar or whatever. That's very different from not wanting to get up and go, spend 7 hours at school.
Right, it's like, I'm so excited to wake up and go to prison all day.
Yeah. That said, more than half, 54%, truly want to function better in the mornings. I would just rather sleep better in the mornings. Interestingly, 32% of respondents claim they can train their body to require less sleep than the recommended hours suggest. And this is sort of what I did. I don't know if I meant to do it or not, but it was just something I did all the way back in high school, where I would stay up late and then usually until midnight or 1, and then I'd have to wake up at 6 o'clock for school to get ready for school. And eventually I just sort of got used to it. And now 6 to 7 hours of sleep is really all I need. More than that is good, but it's not like I actually need more than that.
I feel like if I sleep more than I need to, which is why I have to set an alarm, then I feel like it's counterproductive. I don't feel more rested because I slept more. I feel groggy all throughout the day, and it never goes away.
I think that is a thing where if you oversleep, it'll make you feel more tired. I have no clue what the science is behind that, but I have heard that before. And I agree with you. I feel the same way.
As the study also finds that after battling through the morning, 69% of adults experience a dip in energy around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. See, I don't experience that. I do experience being tired after I eat. And that's become such a giant pain for me lately that, because of how my schedule is, I end up eating, and it's like 2 hours before work or whatever that I finally get around to eating. And it's like, then I want to take a nap. But I can't take a nap because in half an hour I have to start getting ready for work, and in an hour I have to leave for work or whatever. It's bad timing, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't want to be tired after I eat.
Well, maybe, so for me at least, if I eat, I don't want to call it overeating, but if I eat like a full meal, then sometime, like if I feel really full in my stomach, I get tired. But if I just snack throughout the day, which is kind of what I do, because working night shift, I snack and I drink coffee and water and stuff, and it makes me feel more alert. But if I were to eat like a full meal in the middle of the night or even in the middle of the day, I would get tired and want to take a nap.
Yeah, because your body is like focusing on digesting. And I'm not saying that that's what you're doing, but that is what I've noticed too. If I just eat like little snacks all throughout the day, I never get tired from eating, but I sometimes I'm just eating out or something, and I'm eating something that's really good, and I just don't stop myself because it's so good, and then I regret it for like 2 whole hours because I'm just like tired and don't want to move around.
I might have to try that then, because I did have some pizza from Little Zoe's, as mentioned earlier, but I only had like 2 slices, right? And I didn't feel tired afterward because there's 2 slices of pizza. That's not going to fill me up or anything like that. So maybe that's worth trying. I know that's been the biggest hang up about all of this. I'm not stressed, I'm not tired or any of this other nonsense, but man, I eat and I want to take a nap, and I rarely eat in a time frame that makes that actually doable. Coming up though, we're going to be talking about how Hawaii is having issues with jet fuel in their water. Also going to be talking about the United Nations voting on whether or not to condemn what Russia has done in Ukraine. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The White House has focused on the threats posed by China and Russia in its newly released national security strategy. The Biden administration says the coming decade will be decisive for global challenges like competition between dominant world powers. A US jury has begun deliberations on the fate of the gunman responsible for the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida. The case is the deadliest mass shooting to reach a jury trial in the United States, as FSN's Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Nicholas Cruz has already pleaded guilty to the 17 counts of first-degree murder. Now the jury's job is to decide if he should get life in prison or the death penalty. Prosecutors have argued that when Cruz, who was 19 at the time, went to his former school to carry out what's the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history, it was a cold and calculated act. His defense lawyers said Cruz was mentally ill and brain damaged as a result of his mother using drugs and alcohol when she was pregnant. She asked the jury to show mercy, even though she admitted he did not have any for his victims.
Scientists at Stanford School of Medicine have successfully transplanted human brain tissue into rats. The experiment could help researchers better understand autism, schizophrenia, and other neurological conditions. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The experiment started 7 years ago when researchers began growing simplified human brain cells in the lab, then injected them into the brains of baby rats. According to their results, which were published in the journal Nature on Wednesday, the rats incorporated the human cells into their own brain tissue, which then seemed to guide the rats' movements. The researchers say the rats didn't show signs of health issues related to the experiment, and they hope further studies, which could use the brain cells from people with autism and other conditions, could help them better understand the biology underlying those disorders.
Business and economic data out on Wednesday suggests that inflation in the US shows few signs of cooling. Wholesale prices ticked up in September, despite the US Federal Reserve's efforts to cool rising costs. FSN's William Denslow reports from New York.
The producer price index ticked up 0.4% in September, exceeding the 0.2% rise many analysts had expected. This metric's a gauge on the price that companies in the US get for the services and products they make. Inflation in the US is currently up at around 40-year highs, with PPI now up 8.5% compared to a year ago. The Federal Reserve has raised interest rates 5 times already this year in a bid to curb price pressures. Analysts expect the Fed to again raise rates by 75 basis points at the central bank's next meeting in early November. The closely watched Consumer Price Index is due out on Thursday. William Denslow, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today remembering the great Angela Lansbury, who died yesterday at the age of 96. She was an absolute phenomenon, in shorthand described today by so many news publications as the star of Murder, She Wrote. And indeed she was, but she was so much more than that. Her career spanned 80 years. As a teenager, she got her start in radio dramas. Then after moving to the US from her native Britain, caught the eye of a Hollywood executive and never looked back. She won a Lifetime Achievement Oscar in 2013, won a slew of Tony Awards for roles in musicals and dramatic theatre on Broadway. In an appearance at the American Film Institute, she recalled being selected to play the role of the singing teapot Mrs. Potts in the 1991 Walt Disney version of Beauty and the Beast.
I mean, this was the best. You can imagine what a thrill it was for me to be hailed as a lovable little singing teapot after years of playing some pretty despicable characters. I mean, children no longer hid behind their mother's skirts when I came around, and they approached me in the aisles of supermarkets, whispering, "Mom, it's Mrs. Potts." You know, I was suddenly a heroine.
And, of course, she was a heroine in Murder, She Wrote. Angela Lansbury, dead at the age of 96. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. The White House has focused on the threats posed by China and Russia in its newly released national security strategy. A US jury has begun deliberations on the fate of the gunman responsible for the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida. And scientists at Stanford School of Medicine have successfully transplanted human brain tissue into rats. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
For those hoping to get ahead of the work week, look no further than Overtime Plus, a new app that lets you work for your company even while you sleep. The app keeps you trapped in a constant half-awake, half-dream state where your thoughts are never far from the drudgeries of the work week. By simply laying your phone on your mattress, the app's accelerometers are able to measure your movements throughout the night, so it knows when you're close to falling into a deep sleep and losing focus of the crushing work demands ahead of you. When restful sleep is detected, the app dips into your personalized work tasks to generate a subliminal signal, like the date of an important deadline or keywords from the most damning portion of your last job review, to jostle you back into a state of productive, semi-awake agitation.
I was close to falling asleep last night, then my app started whispering my boss's name over and over again until I was awake and answering work emails at 3 in the morning.
Last night it made me dream that I was locked in the office until I could find the most optimal way to catalog the company's new server. I still haven't figured it out.
The app doesn't just keep you mentally shackled to your day job, but also serves as an alarm clock by repeatedly shouting you're late for work until you're jolted out of bed in a panic each morning.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
Going into the second hour here on Free Talk Live, you are invited to join us, 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And coming up, I mean, really the big news is the American government seems to be willing and ready to sort of turn its back on Saudi Arabia. The top Senate Democrat is vowing to block all future arms sales to Saudi Arabia. And this this is big news because Saudi Arabia is as bad as the United States as far as their warmongering goes. They are horrifically violent, and they are committing actual crimes against humanity and war crimes against Yemen. And I would be very happy to see all of that come to an end. So,
well, I remember like a year ago, they were threatening to stop taking the dollar or taking the dollar for oil. Is that why it is?
I don't know exactly why it is, and we're going to get into that later. But first, let's go to the phones. We have Ben on the line from Massachusetts. Ben, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to weigh in on the waking up stressed. That's something I've experienced a lot of, and it's something I've only talked to a few people about, and I've met few other people who really, really wake up feeling like immediately freaked out by life.
Now, there are periods where, like, this has not been much of an issue over the last, 7 or 8 years, but previously it was almost like I was traumatized by sleep, or I was terrified of being asleep, where if I was about to fall asleep, I would suddenly wake up and my heart would be pounding and I would be freaked out and all of that stuff. But that's not what they're talking about here, I don't think.
I experienced that when
absolutely.
When I was in a car accident, and then I had to be on Keppra, which is like a medicine. It's the anti-seizure medicine, and lots of people have crazy side effects. Anytime I'd fall asleep, I'd wake right back up because I was like afraid I was going to die in my sleep and like having really delusional thoughts. But never just in waking life. Do you experience that every day, Ben?
Pretty much, yeah. Every time I wake up, it's hard to describe, but I'm immediately kind of thrust into this headspace where I'm totally freaked out. And I just kind of wanted to talk briefly about why that is the reality for so many people.
Absolutely.
Bonnie, you were talking about Bonnie, the brain stem, I believe, the lizard brain.
Yeah.
That's tied into our nervous system, which many parts of the brain and body are, of course, but what this has to do with is trauma. And human beings naturally, normally, trauma is literally a part of every person's life. And we've constructed societies and lifestyles that are so kind of detached from historical ways of just ways that human beings have dealt with trauma. So
I think I want further clarification on what you mean, but when I say that existence is traumatic, what I mean by that is that if you took a functioning adult and you just made them the age of 30 and just popped them into existence without any explanation or without any warning, without any guides, without any gods or deities or anything, just bam, suddenly you exist, they would be traumatized and they would be afraid and they would be freaked out. We don't experience that as human beings because we sort of become normalized to it as children. You can't lash out at the world when you're an infant, when you were just born or whatever. All you can do is sort of take it in, and everyone is traumatized, but everyone has forgotten they're traumatized. And we've sort of developed this entire society that is used to mask that. That's why we have these governments and these gods and all these other things so that we can forget, just how terrifying it is to just suddenly exist and to not have any explanation, to not have anyone coming down saying, okay, look, this is why you exist, and this is what the point of all of it is. There's no explanation, and it freaks people out, and they hide from it, and they fear death, and they have all of this baggage. When I say people are traumatized, or everyone is traumatized, that's what I mean. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, we all get traumatized for different reasons, but trauma essentially just means wound, I believe, and we all get wounded in life. And if we don't have ways, we don't have systems that we're plugged into that allow us to deal with it and process it, it gets internalized. And when it gets internalized, we have stress hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline that get kind of on this auto sort of, they're automatically produced. You don't even have to think about it. You can get locked into essentially PTSD. And when that happens, you have a very hard time kind of getting your nervous system out of that state where it's producing stress hormones all the time. So, if it's so hardwired to do that, when you wake up, it's your brain has just been so there's like a roadmap. There's all these paved pathways in the brain that just get triggered, basically.
If your brain wants to take the path through the neurons that it's most used to, and it's lots of work to create a new pattern or path, so you'll just continue repeating that. Well, one of the things that I can say that has been a thing that throughout history people use to deal with this kind of thing, but we don't have access to as easily anymore, is psychedelics. And I think that's on purpose.
Oh, I completely agree with you there. I mean, me personally, I've benefited a lot from them. And of course, they need to be used carefully and in the right setting, of course, as they say. But yeah, they can be very, very beneficial. And I think that is because they essentially force you to confront kind of your deepest fears, which for most of us, to get back to what Aria was saying, for most of us, whether we're conscious of it or not, our deepest fear is probably death and the unknown.
Yep.
So when you take psychedelics, you kind of start thinking about those things. And that allows you to kind of transcend your normal everyday human experience. And that's why psychedelics allow people to kind of connect on a deep level with other people and with nature as a whole, because you realize you're an energy force that's occupying a body, basically. And that energy exists in all things. At least that's what I believe. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Psychedelics can be very helpful. I mean, clearly the research shows that.
But they're not a cure-all by any means, and there's still a lot of work that a person is going to have to do. They can't just eat some magic mushrooms and like, hey, look at me, I'm not traumatized anymore, or anything like that. So, psychedelics are a medicine, but they're not in and of themselves a cure for anything in particular.
Next time I do psychedelics, I really want to do it with like a clinic or something that will do I forget the integration phase, like afterwards, because one of the things that it's so funny he brought up, like death. I guess it's a very common theme to experience during a psychedelic trip is like I was just enjoying myself. I was on mushrooms and I was like, oh, I bet I look really pretty right now because I feel really good. So I'm going to look in the mirror. And what I saw was just, I don't know how to explain it. What I saw was a dead body. And I was just like, that's not me. And I was really creeped out by that. I had to go get over that, like go do something else to get my mind off it.
Sure.
And over a year later, I thought about it. And it was just like, I realized, I think it was the mushrooms telling me, like, I was focusing on, like, material things when I didn't need to be focusing on, like, the material world, like, how I looked. And one day I'll be a dead body. And I didn't think about it like that till, like, a year later, and I was, like, revisiting it. It's because I tried to run away from it immediately.
Yeah, because it can be scary, and that is definitely a thing, like don't look at yourself in the mirror when you're on like acid or mushrooms sometimes, because sometimes it can just be very confronting and it can freak you out.
It's weird because it wasn't my first time. I used to look in the mirror and be like, this is so fun, I look so pretty. I don't know really why this happened this time, but...
Well, psychedelics can be hard to predict, right? And, I don't know that looking in the mirror is any worse than any other thing that a person can do while on psychedelics. Ben, thank you so much for the call tonight.
That was really interesting.
It's tricky, Sometimes you can look into a mirror, as you were saying, and you eat just fine. But then there's that one time when you're on shrooms and you look in the mirror, and then there you go, down into the labyrinth. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up here, including how the FBI counts mass shootings and how they're stopped. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of Bullion Max's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and Bitcoin.com is where you can go to stay up to date on all of the news and headlines that are relevant to you. If you're already into cryptocurrency, you can find all of that and more at news.bitcoin.com. But if you don't already know about this important world-changing technology, then head on over to Bitcoin.com and click Getting Started at the top of the page. And it only takes a few minutes for you to watch some of these videos to learn the basics about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And you can dive as deep into this subject as you want. All of those resources are there at Bitcoin.com, or you can keep you can just learn the basics over there at Bitcoin.com, all on a sleek, easy to use modern website, Bitcoin.com. You can even get Bitcoin there and some other cryptocurrencies there, I think at exchange.bitcoin.com. I'm not exactly sure, but I know that they will sell you Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and some other cryptocurrencies directly on their site. So you don't have to worry about getting scammed or anything like that. That's Bitcoin.com. With you tonight, it's Aria, Bonnie, and Nikki. And Bonnie, you have a story about the FBI and mass shootings. And this is a story that we've heard repeatedly. Let me back up a bit. We as libertarians know that the way you stop a mass shooter is with a gun. And it doesn't matter to me if the person stopping the mass shooter is a police officer or not. Either way, you have to get someone there on the scene who has a gun and who can shoot the bad guy. because the bad guy has a gun. You can't attack them with a knife or throw a ninja star at them or whatever. You have to counter them with an equal amount of force generally. And the problem with the police is that they have to travel there. And police, even when they're not cowards like we saw it in Uvalde, they still take 30 to 40 minutes to even get to where this stuff is happening. And a lot of people can be executed in cold blood in 40 minutes. With an armed citizenry, there's already someone there on site who can take out that armed shooter.
Yep. And another thing that we've talked about on the show multiple times before is it's just speculating, but it is also common sense to speculate that the number of shootings that were thwarted by armed citizens has to be, not really that well taken into consideration, because how do you count something that didn't happen? Or why would people spend the time to count something that didn't happen? But apparently the FBI does do just that.
Well, it would definitely be tricky, right? Like, you have to know that, person A pulls out their gun and they're going to execute, they're going to murder, 10 people or whatever, but person B happens to be there and he ends that before it even begins. I'm not surprised that this wouldn't count as, someone stopping a mass shooting, because at that point there was no mass shooting. There was just someone drew a gun and was probably going to do something violent. And if you're person B in this scenario, person B again was the person who stopped the shooting before it started. Person B is probably going to prison for murder in this particular scenario. So the sad thing is about American society is you almost have to wait until the mass shooting is going on before you put a stop to it. Otherwise, you're going to end up being considered the aggressive. Well, that person didn't kill anyone, but you killed them. So it's a messy situation. So tell us about this story.
Well, the FBI does count how many people have thwarted active shooting, but surprise, surprise, it turns out that they significantly undercounted the number of times that happened. According to a new report from the Crime Prevention Research Center, the FBI's official data contains massive errors when it comes to tracking active shooting incidents, and the agency has undercounted how often armed citizens have thwarted active shootings over the past 8 years. The FBI defines an active shooter as one or more individuals actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area, but does not include crimes related to criminal activities such as robberies or gang shootouts. At the center of the discrepancy...
Why would they include gang shootouts? I understand why they wouldn't include robberies, because the point of the robbery isn't to, execute a mass shooting. Yeah. It's to steal from people. But the whole point of a gang shootout would be to kill people.
I don't know. That is weird. Maybe because it's targeted and not just a populated area.
Okay, fair. And because, that's, as you mentioned, it's targeted, so it's more about the specific individuals you're shooting at. So it's... Plus, they get to then characterize that as gang violence, which helps them with other fun statistics that they like to lie about. Okay.
Says at the center of the discrepancy are two variables: misclassified shootings and overlooked incidents. Quote, although collecting such data is fraught with challenges, some see a pattern of distortion in the FBI numbers because the errors almost exclusively go one way.
I would expect that from the FBI. Yep. I wouldn't expect fairness at all. And if they're going to make a mistake, it's going to be on their side, whereas against the armed population.
Yep, they want us unarmed. It says the way that it goes is minimizing the life-saving actions of armed citizens. That's how the report provided to Fox by author and CPRC founder John Lott. CPRC, again, was the Crime Prevention Research Center.
Thank you. I'd already forgotten what that was.
Yep. Says data released by the nonprofit shows that 34.4% of active shootings were thwarted by armed citizens between 2014 and 2021.
Wow.
However,
1 in 3, that's shocking.
So
that is
is
shocking.
that like no one gets hurt besides obviously the perpetrator? Or could it also be counted if maybe they shot a couple people and then someone stopped them in the act?
I don't know. I kind of wish that they used other things other than just the word thwarted every time they said that, because they haven't really defined that yet. It says, however, FBI data shows only 4.4% of active shootings were thwarted by armed citizens during that time. So
still 4% is really
off.
good. Like, even the most anti-gun person has to hear 4% and say, look, that's people whose lives were literally saved as a result of these peaceful citizens being armed. I don't know how anyone can object to that. I mean, I do know how, because they don't live in a world of reason and facts and things like that, and they think that if they just feel a thing strong enough, then that will make it true.
Guns are just bad and make me scared.
Well, and it's just crazy that they literally lied about 30%.
Well, yeah, it's the government, though. That's what they do. They lie about numbers, and then they reinterpret the numbers, and they define things, and they create mathematical equations that are all used to benefit them. So they probably defined thwarting as zero people killed or wounded or whatever, other than the hypothetical shooter themselves, and that's probably a threshold that only 4% managed to meet.
Yeah, probably.
Says whether deliberately through bias or just incompetence, the FBI database of active shooters cannot be trusted, said Gary Mausner, an emeritus professor at Simon Fraser University in Canada.
It seems like it's most likely to be all of them. Like, a lot of incompetence, certainly, but also a lot of bias, because they do have a vested interest in lying about how many Americans actually thwart mass shooters.
Yep, they want to be the only ones armed.
Right, and they want the police to be the only ones armed, because, if you have guns, then you can defend yourselves, and that makes them a little bit more obsolete. But they don't. Their job isn't to defend you anyway. They serve and protect, all right, but they serve and protect the state. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up about this. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The White House has focused on the threats posed by China and Russia in its newly released national security strategy. The Biden administration says the coming decade will be decisive for global challenges like competition between dominant world powers. A US jury has begun deliberations on the fate of the gunman responsible for the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida. The case is the deadliest mass shooting to reach a jury trial in the United States, as FSN's Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Nicholas Cruz has already pleaded guilty to the 17 counts of first-degree murder. Now the jury's job is to decide if he should get life in prison or the death penalty. Prosecutors have argued that when Cruz, who was 19 at the time, went to his former school to carry out what's the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history, it was a cold and calculated act. His defense lawyers said Cruz was mentally ill and brain damaged as a result of his mother using drugs and alcohol when she was pregnant. She asked the jury to show mercy, even though she admitted he did not have any for his victims.
Scientists at Stanford School of Medicine have successfully transplanted human brain tissue into rats. The experiment could help researchers better understand autism, schizophrenia, and other neurological conditions. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The experiment started 7 years ago when researchers began growing simplified human brain cells in the lab, then injected them into the brains of baby rats. According to their results, which were published in the journal Nature on Wednesday, the rats incorporated the human cells into their own brain tissue, which then seemed to guide the rats' movements. The researchers say the rats didn't show signs of health issues related to the experiment, and they hope further studies, which could use the brain cells from people with autism and other conditions, could help them better understand the biology underlying those disorders.
Business and economic data out on Wednesday suggests that inflation in the US shows few signs of cooling. Wholesale prices ticked up in September, despite the US Federal Reserve's efforts to cool rising costs. FSN's William Denslow reports from New York.
The producer price index ticked up 0.4% in September, exceeding the 0.2% rise many analysts had expected. This metric's a gauge on the price that companies in the US get for the services and products they make. Inflation in the US is currently up at around 40-year highs, with PPI now up 8.5% compared to a year ago. The Federal Reserve has raised interest rates 5 times already this year in a bid to curb price pressures. Analysts expect the Fed to again raise rates by 75 basis points at the central bank's next meeting in early November. The closely watched Consumer Price Index is due out on Thursday. William Denslow, New York.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to take control of the airwaves. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. You can talk about how screwed up the police are. Interestingly, that we started out the show tonight by talking about how much the police suck, and then we talked about, how stressed out people are, and we ended up just sort of inadvertently circling back to how much the police suck. Of course, you don't have to talk about that. You can talk about whatever's important to you. 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And we are talking about this article here from I don't remember who it's from, but it's about how the FBI undercounts the number of times that armed Americans put a stop to mass shooters in the United States. The actual number, according to one person mentioned in the article, is 34%, where the FBI somehow comes up with a number that is closer to 4%.
Yep. And that number, the 34%, it's from the Crime Prevention Research Center.
Is that a government entity? I don't know.
I'm assuming it's
not. It called it a nonprofit later.
Okay. Well, it's definitely not government then, because government's absolutely operating for profit. So what else do we need to take away from this?
This is from Zero Hedge, by the way. Basically, this whole article is just about the FBI is supposed to be in charge of counting these things, and they have massively undercounted the number of times that an armed citizen has put a stop to an active shooter.
They use the word thwarted for this.
That's what I try not to use.
Repeatedly, they use the word thwarted. And I guess it makes sense, thwarting a mass shooting is a good thing. We always hear about the FBI thwarting terror plots, right? That's the terminology that gets bandied about all the time. But the FBI, more often than not, is causing these terror plots in the first place, and it turns out to be, oh, look, it was the FBI all along who they thwarted their own terror plot.
Yeah, it's like Scooby-Doo where they pull the mask off. Oh, it was the FBI the whole time.
The whole time.
That's what we saw with the Whitmer kidnapping nonsense as well. It was like, so 9 out of 10 people here were FBI, and the other guy was just a stoner who you kept feeding pot and finally he
agreed
went
to do
along
this
with
thing.
your nonsense. Okay, yeah, that's the FBI, right? That same institution, the very same, is the one saying, guys, we don't know what's going on, but as far as we can tell, only 4% of the time do Americans actually manage to thwart mass shooters. And in reality, the number is closer to 34%.
I bet the amount of police that thwart mass shootings is way less than 30%.
Certainly. Well, ultimately, all the mass shootings come to an end. And it's always because you get someone else there who has a gun who either shoots the guy or the perpetrator shoots himself. I think that's a way that a lot
it's
of
pretty
them
common,
ended.
I think, yeah.
That was the way the one in Vegas ended, if I recall correctly.
I just don't get it. It's like, can't you just kill yourself and leave everybody else out of it? Like, why do you have to go on a rampage and murder a bunch of innocent people?
Because MK Ultra. Because
Yeah,
they're just a bunch of
probably.
patsies.
I don't know what else to think. It is such a weird thing. Like, okay, look, you want to kill yourself? I'm not going to stop you. And if you legitimately want to kill yourself, there's probably a good enough reason for me to say, you know what, go ahead, man. You do you, and it's your life, right? It's not mine. That's my whole issue with society taking this approach that, society, you can't do that. That's illegal. I mean, society is legitimately illegal. I mean, suicide is legitimately illegal in the United States. And that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Just how do you enforce that? They're dead.
Well, you can't, but there are ways of punishing the family after when it comes to like life insurance and things like that.
Wow, I didn't know that.
They do that, and if you fail, then they could charge you. I don't know. I've never heard of anyone being charged, but in theory, they could charge you for attempted suicide in the same way that they charge you for attempted murder or whatever. But it's just completely insane. The most fundamental right that a person has is the right over their life. And if it's my life, then I can end it at any time if I so choose. I don't choose to. I happen to rather enjoy being alive, but not everyone does. And as far as I can tell, if someone doesn't want to be alive anymore, well, that's their call to make. But why they have to kill other people, I don't know.
And at least it almost makes sense if they go and kill people that were rude to them or that they see as the reason that they hate their lives. But a lot of these mass shootings are just complete strangers, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like I get the kid like going into the school where he was bullied, or I've heard of some family members going to hospitals and going nuts. But random shopping malls and, grocery stores, none of it makes sense. And it blows my mind to even think about how some people could be so mentally ill where they want to harm other human beings. I really just don't understand it at all.
Well, you have some of these people who are a side effect of the COVID-19 lockdowns. The one who shut up the grocery store in New York City or wherever, I think it was
Buffalo.
New York City. Yeah, Buffalo, thank you. He admitted in his manifesto that you can't find online because the media was like, no, we can't let people actually read what this guy has to say. But he straight up pointed out that he was bored during COVID-19, so he spent time on it wasn't 4chan, it was some other website though, and he just became more and more radicalized because he wasn't interacting anymore with normal people. The only interactions he was having with people were online, and it was in these dens of hatred and racism and vile, despicable behavior and words and thoughts and deeds until finally he just lost himself within it. And I don't. It's not entirely COVID-19 and the lock. It's not entirely the pandemic. I'm trying to say this without blaming the pandemic because
the government lockdowns. Yes,
it's not entirely the government lockdown's fault because he has responsibility for what he did, but the lockdowns did traumatize him. They did cut him off from everyone else and lock him in his house and make him suffer. And isolation is known to be a form of torture.
Well, and a lot of these people are on SSRIs and other psych meds that literally have the side effect listed on, on the bottle or whatever, homicidal thoughts, suicidal thoughts.
Yep.
So I'm not very surprised that people that are on these psych meds are losing their minds and going and trying to kill a bunch of people because that is literally a side effect of the medications.
That was always so strange to me when you hear these commercials for, SSRIs or, depression medications or whatever. Stop using and, call your doctor if you experience suicidal thoughts. Is it the point of this crap to stop the suicidal thoughts?
Yeah,
Are you kidding me?
Oh, you're depressed? Well, take this. It'll make you more depressed.
Or just like it's a medication for something else, but it's like, wouldn't the desire to kill people be something that makes your life worse than this other thing that you're trying to fix?
Well, and you would think that would be like the worst case of all is either killing yourself or killing somebody else. So you think no matter what the medication is, if that is even a possible side effect, even if there is the slimmest chance, it would not be worth it to even give it to a single person.
That's a really, how does a medication that could cause you to want to go on a freaking killing spree, how does that get FDA approval? It's like, look, it's fine. It's going to make most people feel better, but like for every so often, it just makes people go on a killing spree. And we don't know. It just seems to happen. The FDA's like, you know what? That checks out. We're going to approve this. And it's because the FDA obviously is bought and sold. And if you just Google FDA corruption or drug company corruption or pharmaceutical company corruption, there's countless examples of this prior to COVID-19. Once 2020 hit, all of this got swept away and everyone forgot how corrupt the FDA is and how corrupt Big Pharma is. But no, these guys are evil. They don't care. They'll give you whatever. They want you to take their medicine and they don't care if it kills you as long as you pay them.
And it ties back in with psychedelics. That's another reason that they don't want us using things that actually work like psychedelics, and they'll criminalize you for having it.
Absolutely. 603-283-6160 if you want to join us. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
Among other things, I've been called frugal. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Hey, it all adds up, so it makes sense to question every expense now. For instance, can you live without your telephone landline? That bill shows up like clockwork month after month, while you make most of your calls on a smartphone, right? Unless you need what we used to call the phone company for internet access, cut the cord and take a closer look at your credit card bill. What recurring charges can you live without? Apps like Truebill help you track and manage your subscriptions. If you bank with Bank of America, their free Keep the Change feature rounds up your purchases to the next dollar and deposits it into your savings account. It all adds up. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. forkfest.party. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Free speech is protected on the internet, right? Not always.
government agencies try to limit free speech and commerce on the net. Luckily, when they do, the Institute for Justice is there to defend your First Amendment right to free speech. IJ helped set the first federal precedent for internet free speech in 1999, and ever since has worked to prevent unconstitutional roadblocks in cyberspace. Visit our website today at ij.org.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves. You can join the discussion, talk about SSRIs, depression, the right to suicide, or just how much cops suck, if you'd like. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And again, that number is 603-283-6160. Coming up, Saudi Arabia. As it turns out, Bonnie, you asked earlier, the reason that the United States may be turning against Saudi Arabia is because of the OPEC countries, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. That's what OPEC stands for. It includes Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries, as far as I can tell, and probably some that aren't in the Middle East. But anyway, they decided that they weren't making enough money from oil, so they were going to decrease production so that they could, they could decrease the supply of gasoline and oil out there, which of course raises the price because the demand stays the same.
So when a bunch of countries do it, it's fine. But when businesses get together to decide to keep the prices at a certain level, that's criminal. I mean, at least in the United States.
Well, this would certainly be considered criminal if it was companies in the United States doing it. I don't remember exactly what the word is for it, but it's price
gouging?
Price fixing.
Fixing, that's what it is.
Is what it is. And I mean, that's certainly what they're doing, but what can you do, when it's a sovereign nation that isn't within United States jurisdiction? What is the United States going to do about it? Well, we know what the United States is going to do about it. They're going to declare war and drop some bombs and kill some brown people because that's what the United States does. However, they don't want to do that with Saudi Arabia because they have a long history of being friends with Saudi Arabia, even though Saudi Arabia does horrific things like invite journalists to their industries and then, to their embassies and then kill them and then dismember them and send them back, sneak them out of the building in rugs or whatever it was. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember they did this with some journalists and it was just absolutely horrific. It's like, this is an ally of the United States killing a journalist at an embassy and then hiding the body in rugs after they chopped it into pieces, right? They did that.
Yeah, you think we wouldn't be, or you think the United States wouldn't be friends with somebody like that?
You would think, but they are. And that's coming up because evidently Joe Biden's not amused by it. And even a Democratic war hawk, one of the leading Democrat war hawks, is like, we're not selling you any more weapons. But first, the United States military isn't any better than any of the militaries around the world, right?
Surprise, surprise.
I mean, we're constantly running ads for Camp Lejeune, which is, I think it was a boot camp. I'm not entirely sure. It had something to do with the military, though, where they basically gave people poisonous water, or from what I could tell, over the course of 50 years or whatever.
What was it, North Carolina?
I don't remember exactly where it was. But it was the U.S. military. They do shady things. And one of the more shady things they've been doing recently is the people in Hawaii evidently have discovered jet fuel in their water. And what is jet fuel chemically?
It's like must be some sort of gasoline product.
I don't know.
I mean, I would assume that's what jets run on.
I just know
it's like a stronger, it's like a higher octane gasoline.
I don't know. I've never given it any thought whatsoever. I mean,
because I know some people who used to put like jet fuel in their cars to make them go faster.
Wow.
Does that work?
Yeah, it's really expensive.
Does it break your car?
Well, I guess it depends. I mean, I guess not because they were doing it, but like race car fuel is higher octane, so that's the difference.
Okay, see, I thought it was hydrogen, but it's not. That could happen in the future. So that's why I was curious. So it's not hydrogen that they're using. It is just leaded gasoline, higher octane, all of that stuff. I remember the episode of Family Guy where Peter had the brilliant idea to fill up his truck with jet fuel, and he thought that this would allow him to fly because he's Peter Griffin. I missed that show, especially those older seasons, man, where they did
days.
crap like that. This is so stupid. Good show. Or at least it used to be. I don't know. I haven't seen it in a very long time, but fond memories of it at the very least. So anyway, evidently, yes, it's gasoline, and Hawaiians are now finding it in their water.
Yeah, so apparently you're not supposed to drink gasoline, and it makes you sick. Apparently, the U.S. Navy
should take a note
didn't
of
know
that.
that. So a lawsuit alleges that the Navy harbored toxic secrets after jet fuel leaked from a storage facility in Hawaii operated by the Navy, contaminating locals' drinking water and sickening hundreds of families.
That sounds exactly like the U.S. military, too. They have a leak, and it's poisoning people, making them sick. What do? They cover it up.
Yep.
Instead of addressing the problem and fixing it, like, hey, guys, this is a problem. We're sorry. Stop drinking the water. We're going to try to get this sorted out. You know, doing the rational, responsible thing. Your government at work, Americans. Those people out there who consider yourselves Americans, this is your government in action. This is what it does. It poisons the Hawaiians.
At the military base I lived on in Utah called Dugway Proving Ground, 4,000 sheep died in like the year 2000 just around there, like miles and miles and miles around this place because it's as big as Rhode Island. And the U.S. government never took, they never said that they did it, but they paid for all the sheep.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
4,000 just dropped dead. I mean,
it's
really
sketchy.
Wasn't like it could have been all at once,
all in
right?
the same time frame. They test chemical weapons there. There was a time that I didn't live there, but people I know lived there in also the early 2000s, and there suddenly the alarms went off to go inside, and birds were falling from the sky.
That's terrifying.
Jesus Christ!
I lived there for 5 years, and I was always thinking about that.
What is this place called?
Dugway Proving Grounds.
So I'm just gonna write it down. Don't go here. Well, it's a military base, right? So you probably wouldn't hopefully find yourself there anyways. But
no, but I want to read more about it now.
Yeah.
Jesus
well, I'm sure
Christ.
a lot of military bases are like that, and you know, there's
where the alarms go off. It's like, oh, we got to go inside before we freaking drop dead.
Yeah,
that's got to be unusual. So you said they tested chemical weapons there? I mean, it makes sense because the United States denies it, but they're obviously engaging in all sorts of chemical and biological weapon research.
Yep, that Dugway Proving Ground is also a place that made the news in, I think, like 2013 or something, because somebody accidentally sent anthrax out in the mail that worked out there.
How do you accidentally do that?
I don't know, but the colonel got fired.
Was this the big anthrax scare?
It was like
that
on the
was
news.
Earlier than 2013. The big one where everyone was freaking out.
Yeah.
That was around 2001.
Yeah, I think it was early 2000s.
Yeah. Man, crazy. I'm going to have to read more about that. I've never heard about it. I guess it's not so. I just always assumed that the United States military outsourced the biological and chemical research to countries like Ukraine and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and all of these other countries. The same countries that it outsources its torture to. And, it's black site prisons. I just assumed they were also the ones. Like Ukraine has a biological or a chemical weapons research facility partnered with the United States. And it's to combat bioterrorism or whatever, right? Like, yeah.
Because that makes sense.
But then there's also things like Plum Island here in the United States, which is almost certainly a chemical weapons.
Where is it?
Plum Island. It's off the coast somewhere, I think, of Pennsylvania. I'm not 100% sure. It's here in the Northeast, though, and there's very compelling evidence to suggest that Lyme disease originated there.
Really?
And that's why Lyme disease is so much more prominent in the Northeast versus other parts of the world. Like, if you were to look at it as the epicenter, it tracks what you would expect the growth to be of Lyme disease throughout the United States if it was centered on Plum Island.
Dang, I never heard of that.
Me either.
I think it was one of Jesse Ventura's little episodes about it. Some of the stuff he did was good. Some of it was like, oh, okay, you need to get away from Alex Jones.
Is Plum Island like a military base too?
I don't recall. This was like 2006 that I would have been reading and learning about this stuff.
I feel like there's a Plum Island off the coast of either Massachusetts or
it could
New
be,
Hampshire.
like I said, it's here in the Northeast. I don't think it was New
This
Hampshire.
This is lime country.
It is. All of the Northeast is, and evidence suggests, it doesn't prove, but evidence suggests that it's because Lyme disease originated at an outbreak from Plum Island, just like COVID-19, almost certainly, or I don't want to say almost certainly, but evidence suggests that it originated with an outbreak from the Wuhan laboratory. Yep. Same sort of thing, except, here it was Lyme disease instead of COVID-19. These things happen because governments throughout the world are constantly investing money in this sort of thing, because that's the cheapest, the easiest way for you to annihilate your enemy. If they could develop a disease that only targeted Americans, China would have it easy. Russia would have it easy. 603-283-6160. When we get back, we're going to talk about how Hawaii is getting poisoned by the U.S. Navy. That and more coming up, including Saudi Arabia. It is Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The White House has focused on the threats posed by China and Russia in its newly released national security strategy. The Biden administration says the coming decade will be decisive for global challenges like competition between dominant world powers. A US jury has begun deliberations on the fate of the gunman responsible for the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida. The case is the deadliest mass shooting to reach a jury trial in the United States, as FSN's Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Nicholas Cruz has already pleaded guilty to the 17 counts of first-degree murder. Now the jury's job is to decide if he should get life in prison or the death penalty. Prosecutors have argued that when Cruz, who was 19 at the time, went to his former school to carry out what's the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history, it was a cold and calculated act. His defense lawyers said Cruz was mentally ill and brain damaged as a result of his mother using drugs and alcohol when she was pregnant. She asked the jury to show mercy, even though she admitted he did not have any for his victims.
Scientists at Stanford School of Medicine have successfully transplanted human brain tissue into rats. The experiment could help researchers better understand autism, schizophrenia, and other neurological conditions. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The experiment started 7 years ago when researchers began growing simplified human brain cells in the lab, then injected them into the brains of baby rats. According to their results, which were published in the journal Nature on Wednesday, the rats incorporated the human cells into their own brain tissue, which then seemed to guide the rats' movements. The researchers say the rats didn't show signs of health issues related to the experiment, and they hope further studies, which could use the brain cells from people with autism and other conditions, could help them better understand the biology underlying those disorders.
Business and economic data out on Wednesday suggests that inflation in the US shows few signs of cooling. Wholesale prices ticked up in September, despite the US Federal Reserve's efforts to cool rising costs. FSN's William Denslow reports from New York.
The producer price index ticked up 0.4% in September, exceeding the 0.2% rise many analysts had expected. This metric's a gauge on the price that companies in the US get for the services and products they make. Inflation in the US is currently up at around 40-year highs, with PPI now up 8.5% compared to a year ago. The Federal Reserve has raised interest rates 5 times already this year in a bid to curb price pressures. Analysts expect the Fed to again raise rates by 75 basis points at the central bank's next meeting in early November. The closely watched consumer price index is due out on Thursday. William Denslow, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today remembering the great Angela Lansbury, who died yesterday at the age of 96. She was an absolute phenomenon, in shorthand described today by so many news publications as the star of Murder, She Wrote. And indeed she was, but she was so much more than that. Her career spanned 80 years. As a teenager, she got her start in radio dramas. Then after moving to the US from her native Britain, caught the eye of a Hollywood executive and never looked back. She won a Lifetime Achievement Oscar in 2013, won a slew of Tony Awards for roles in musicals and dramatic theatre on Broadway. In an appearance at the American Film Institute, she recalled being selected to play the role of the singing teapot Mrs. Potts in the 1991 Walt Disney version of Beauty and the Beast.
I mean, this was the best. You can imagine what a thrill it was for me to be hailed as a lovable little singing teapot after years of playing some pretty despicable characters. I mean, children no longer hid behind their mother's skirts when I came around, and they approached me in the aisles of supermarkets, whispering, "Mom, it's Mrs. Potts." You know, I was suddenly a heroine.
And, of course, she was a heroine in Murder, She Wrote. Angela Lansbury, dead at the age of 96. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. The White House has focused on the threats posed by China and Russia in its newly released national security strategy. A US jury has begun deliberations on the fate of the gunman responsible for the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida. And scientists at Stanford School of Medicine have successfully transplanted human brain tissue into rats. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
So, you're trying to get pregnant and nothing is working. Give it another shot. Because the key to getting pregnant is let people know you're trying, often and with great detail. By constantly announcing to your friends, family, and casual acquaintances that you're trying to conceive, you dramatically increase the chances of your partner putting a brand new bun in your oven. When I was trying for Lincoln, I made it a daily goal to bring up which position Hunter and I were experimenting with in every conversation I had. I told literally anyone I could, from teachers to babysitters to telemarketers, that I stand on my head after Hunter finishes inside me. And sharing that information really helped me conceive. Plus, people like hearing about it. There's nothing to be ashamed of or hide. What your husband's unprotected penis feels like as he thrusts. How you'll whisper possible baby names in his ear as he ejaculates. These are perfectly natural things to bring up at an office party or to announce at the beginning of a flight.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is is Free Talk Live with Aria, Bonnie, and Nikki going into the third hour here. Of course, you are still invited to join us. Phones are open, 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And we're talking here about the various screwed up things the U.S. military has done throughout the past. Most recently, the U.S. Navy has been leaking jet fuel into the drinking water in Hawaii and then covering it up. Nikki, tell us more about this story.
So, Army Major Amanda Fint, whose family is suing, told ABC News, "You've got American citizens being poisoned by an American asset on American soil." So she's clearly not very happy about this.
Yep, it's true. That's what you got.
Are Hawaiian? Okay, I guess they are American citizens. Yeah. I didn't think they considered themselves American citizens, though.
I don't think it's a state, I
think most of them don't want to be, but yep, right. They're a state.
I mean, whether they want to be or not, you're right. They are, and they are being poisoned by their government on their own soil. That's pretty screwed up.
So in November of 2021, health officials and the Navy ordered residents of Pearl Harbor and the surrounding area to stop using tap water after dangerous levels of petroleum products were found in the Navy's Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam water system.
So the government did tell them to stop drinking the water?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't sound like they covered it up maybe they did somewhere down the line. I don't...
Well, that doesn't claim responsibility for
it. That's true.
But it's at least a good step, right? I mean, in some places, the water's flammable.
Well, yeah, and at least they weren't just like, well, we're just going to let people keep drinking it,
Well, what do you do if you can't drink the water supply? Like, you just have to order it from another place?
I assume you drink bottled water?
Yeah, but you wouldn't want to shower in that water or anything, if it's...
true.
If it's contaminated with, jet fuel, that's terrible.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do anything with it.
But like you said, there are other places in the United States right now that also have contaminated water and have for a long time. So this isn't a new thing in the United States.
To say nothing of Flint, Michigan, which is still dealing with the same nonsense of having undrinkable water. There was also one recently in Jackson, Mississippi, where they had undrinkable water. Yep. It's surprisingly common. It's way more common than it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. So the source was pinpointed back to the jet fuel leak from the nearby Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. Hundreds of families reported petroleum odors coming from residential tap water supplied by the Navy water system, alongside reports of health issues caused by the contaminated drinking water.
So they were like pouring a glass of water, like, wow, this smells like gasoline.
Wow.
Apparently, and people were getting sick from it. Wow. It only takes drinking so much gas to get sick.
I can't believe anyone was drinking it. I mean... To me, if I poured a glass of water, it was like, Jesus Christ, this smells like gasoline.
Well, when you think about it, it might take a little bit for high levels to be in the water supply. So if it's only trace amounts, that would probably still be enough to get you sick.
Some people can't smell like at all.
Oh, that's true.
That's also true. So the DOH had received almost 500 complaints of fuel or gasoline-like odors from people who received water from the Navy water system. Numerous families allege that they are still battling long-term chronic health issues in the lawsuit. A PGA golf professional says he has had 5 surgeries since and continues to battle internal bleeding.
Oh my God.
One family said it had been plagued with abdominal pain, vomiting, memory loss, skin rashes, brain fog, eye irritation, seizures, and teeth and gum issues.
I can only imagine. It's gasoline. You're not supposed to drink it. It's deadly. I'm surprised these people aren't dead.
Yeah, it is very, very scary. So, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, many people remain in temporary housing due to the drinking water crisis.
So they at least did provide them with a place to stay. So that's good. And, ultimately, the United States military is responsible for this?
I don't know if they provided. It says many people are in temporary housing, but it doesn't really specify whether the government is paying for it or not.
Good point. I would say if it doesn't say they're paying for it, then I would assume they're probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Especially if they didn't want to take the blame and were trying to cover it up. Like, oh, I don't know how this happened. We had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, we have this Air Force base over here, and it was leaking jet fuel, right? But that's got nothing to do with the gasoline in your water.
Yeah, just a coincidence.
There's entirely unrelated things.
So activists are calling on the Navy to take action almost a year after the Hawaii Department of Health issued an emergency order against the military agency to address the closure and defueling of Red Hill facility. So it didn't really... I'm assuming Red Hill facility is a Navy-run fuel facility.
I'm sure.
If the Navy has committed to closing the facility, they need to move with the sense of urgency as the native people of Hawaii feel they must. And I'm not surprised that it's not the first time that the U.S. military has done unthinkable things to native people. So I'm not surprised that it's native Hawaiian people that are being affected by this.
Happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah, right.
The craziest thing is that this happened over a year ago, and we heard about Mississippi the day of, and we just haven't heard anything. I hadn't heard anything about this. It doesn't seem like something that gets talked about a lot.
That's a good point.
No.
I hadn't heard anything about this prior to today.
No, I haven't either. And this is a year later. I mean, it's October of 2022, and this happened in November of 2021. And this wasn't even in the news until, it might have been when it first happened, but ABC News definitely didn't cover it until recently, So
is this story from November 2021? Or
no, this is from, it might have been the end of August.
Okay.
This story is from.
So it's got up-to-date information in it, is basically what I was wondering. So not a whole lot has been done on this front. It's just there's...
the lawsuit, that's really the only thing. But the families had to take it upon themselves to sue the U.S. Navy.
And presumably, have they even cleaned the drinking water, or is there still jet fuel leaking into it? Because that's got to be expensive, right?
I'm assuming, but then it said some people are still in temporary housing. So it doesn't really specify whether this is an ongoing issue. I'm assuming that they took care of it rather quickly, but maybe I shouldn't assume that.
It would be hard to assume that, except, jet fuel is expensive. In addition to not melting jet steel beams, it is expensive.
Yeah.
And if it's leaking
Those are what I know about it.
I'm sorry?
That's what I know about it.
Yes. And if it's leaking into the drinking water, then that's just a net loss for the U.S. government and the military. They don't care about people. And never mind. They don't care about money either, because they can just print it. So never mind. I don't know what I was going to say, but they do care about losing money, but they don't. Because they can just print infinite amounts of it. Well, they do care about oil, though, and gasoline. They love that crap. So, I don't know. Maybe they care enough about oil and gasoline to do something about this leak.
Well, apparently the leak in the Gulf of Mexico that was like a really big deal in like 2010 just has not stopped leaking. I just learned that recently. I didn't know.
Yeah, I think I've heard that.
The big BP
That's so
leak?
crazy.
Yep,
it's still leaking?
Yeah, it's just never stopped. It's just stopped getting news. It's, the 24-hour news cycle.
Well, that can't be good for the ocean.
I was always curious what happened to the massive amount of oil that leaked out into the ocean. It was just suddenly gone.
No, it'll just wash up on the shores. And didn't you see the Dawn commercial with all the seals?
That's what I was immediately thinking of.
I didn't. I immediately thought of the South Park episodes where they were the superheroes with Captain Hindsight.
Yeah.
Who, pointed out that, what you should have done, you should have had a backup valve so you could, shut this off when it started leaking or whatever. It ended up they summoned Cthulhu and some other stuff. It's a good episode. I mean, it's South Park, so that's what you're going to get. Coming up, we're going to talk about how Saudi Arabia has been frustrating the American government and leaving them asking, what are we going to do about this out-of-control country that isn't listening to us anymore? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS, or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast, or find us on the major podcast platforms. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki, and Bonnie.
And I want to say thank you to Dennis W. That's tonight's amplifier. That means that Dennis is a member of the AMPS program. You can find it at amps.freetalklive.com. That's our Patreon. Stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. So if you like Free Talk Live, if you value the show and the ideas of liberty reaching Don't know how many people on close to 200 radio stations? You may consider joining the AMPS program, like Dennis here has done. Dennis is contributing at least $25 per month to the AMPS program because Dennis is a platinum level member. Of course, we don't ask that. All it takes to get you in is $5 per month. That's amps.freetalklive.com. That gets you in. It does come with a number of cool little features, but really, if you join, it should be because you value Free Talk Live and you want to show your support for the show. So thanks, Dennis. That's amps.freetalklive.com. Let's go to the phones. We have Dave Ridley on the line from RidleyReport.com. Dave, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys. So back in 2013, Ian and I and Daryl Perry and a few other activists were able to, for the first time, sort of strike at the root a little bit because a Federal Reserve person came to New Hampshire, and we were able to confront them on camera and stuff as they were going into the, like for many of us, it felt, for me at least, it felt like the first time, like, usually you feel like you're kind of hacking at the branches, but this is a Federal Reserve person, the root of all our problems.
What sort of Federal Reserve person?
It was nice to be able to question them. I don't remember the details. Again, it was 9 years ago. It was at St. Anselm's College at the Institute of Politics.
I mean, was it like a Ben Bernanke or a Janet Yellen kind of person, or was it like this person is a supervisor at one of the branches or whatever?
I would say he would be considered an official, but he wasn't like he wasn't a grunt.
Okay. So somewhere, okay.
St. Anselm, that's in Keene, right?
That was it. I'm sorry, what?
St. Anselm, is that in Keene?
Oh, no, it's in Manchester.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think Goffstown, technically. Somewhere between, maybe between Manchester and Goffstown. But anyway, that's about to happen again, actually. And there's going to be a Federal Reserve person at the same exact spot on October 21st. And this time, what's different is that a Free Stater has welcomed him to the state, essentially. I'm not sure welcome is, maybe I'm going on memory here as I don't have the exact quote, but Jason Thoren is the founder of the Free State Project who works at St. Anselm's, posted a message on Twitter saying he was very excited to have her visit St. Anselm's College.
Didn't Jason Sorens turn against the Free State Project? Am I remembering correctly?
He's more like he's turned against the idea of New Hampshire independence.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe that's what I was thinking then. Okay.
And I consider Jason a friend, but I wish that he was not so welcoming. I mean, you want to be physically welcoming and everything, but I think I would be excited about such a person visiting, but I'd be excited about the possibility of asking them nasty questions.
Yeah.
Like, tell us more about these wars that you helped start. And the other thing is she's coming here. She works for this inflationist organization, which she's like with the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. She works this inflationist organization, and she's coming to help talk to us about why housing prices are going up and what we can do about it.
Yeah.
Well,
the person responsible, basically. Yeah.
She definitely needs to get Ridley-o'd if you can help it.
Ridley-o'd?
Yeah. Ridley videoed.
So last time we were there, St. Anselm's kicked us out. Like, I think it's a private college. And so they said, "Oh, you people have to leave. You have to stop asking nasty questions." And then later on, the guy who kicked us out told me that we were like the nastiest protesters he's ever seen. It was the worst experience.
Oh, wow.
Well, you were dealing with, this one of the scourges of the planet here. I mean, the Federal Reserve is about as evil as you can get.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, it's possible, for all I know, this lady, I can't remember her last name. Her first name is Raven. There's probably only so many gals named Raven working for the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. But she could be like a dissenting person inside the Federal Reserve. I guess it's conceivable. I don't know. Like Paul Volcker, if you think of it, in 1979, he raised his hand and he said, "Hey, we need to kind of have a rush of brains to the head now and stop printing all this money." And they actually did what Paul Volcker said. So there have been good people at the Federal Reserve now and then.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Nazi Party had some good people, too.
But I just, I think this is not something that should be just, we're just so excited to have what a wonderful person, what a wonderful organization visiting our...
No way.
That's not the kind of take I would have on it.
So are you planning anything for this person? Are you going to go and, protest her visit?
Yeah, to get anything possible, the stars would have to align, but I don't have to have. I don't own a vehicle, so it's not easy for me to get to Manchester.
Gotcha. Well, Dave, thank you so much for the call tonight. I'm with you. I'd rather this person, not even come to New Hampshire, but bureaucrats are going to do their bureaucrat
I actually think
thing.
it's great. I think it's great that they're coming, so free staters can go there, and other lovers of liberty in New Hampshire can go there and question this person. They need to hear these things. They need to hear these nasty questions, and they need that
didn't
sort of
happen
experience.
last time. They shut him out, right? I wasn't clear if he actually got to contact her at all.
He's not with us now, so I don't know. We can find out from Ian during the break.
If I had my way, federal employees would be not allowed to step foot in New Hampshire.
I agree entirely. It should be considered trespassing or an act of war. We also have Sarah on the line from New Mexico. Sarah wants to talk about some voting nonsense. Sarah, why do you like voting?
Something, I really don't like voting. I don't. It's a pain in the butt. But sometimes I just feel. But I mean, if I don't vote, what are the lazy dumb people of Albuquerque gonna do? See that
vote? They're gonna vote, Sarah.
Well, I mean, how many are they gonna really go out there and really do it? I mean, my vote counts even more. See, that's
why does your vote count more?
Okay, the reason is the less people vote, your count weighs more.
Okay, so you want fewer people to vote. You don't want to get out the vote. You want fewer people to vote.
No, I want to get people out to vote so you'll have an honest election.
Okay, so you don't want your vote to matter, right?
Well, I mean, the thing is that more people. Well, the thing is, but the thing is that most American people.
What is the thing, Sarah? Do enlighten me. What is the thing? Do you want your vote to matter or not?
Well, if I want it, I have to vote so that it matters because every election is a very close election. I mean, a lot of the things are just won by a couple of.
Thank you so much for the call tonight, Sarah. Give us a call tomorrow night. Hopefully, you'll be able to complete an entire sentence.
I think you broke her.
I think she was a bit flustered on that particular occasion. I mean, she's smart enough to be able to handle those questions. I think she just didn't expect them.
Yep.
But I mean, because it's something she should think about, though. If she wants people to vote, that means her vote is going to matter less. So if she wants her vote to matter, she should discourage people from voting. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The White House has focused on the threats posed by China and Russia in its newly released national security strategy. The Biden administration says the coming decade will be decisive for global challenges like competition between dominant world powers. A US jury has begun deliberations on the fate of the gunman responsible for the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida. The case is the deadliest mass shooting to reach a jury trial in the United States, as FSN's Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Nicholas Cruz has already pleaded guilty to the 17 counts of first-degree murder. Now the jury's job is to decide if he should get life in prison or the death penalty. Prosecutors have argued that when Cruz, who was 19 at the time, went to his former school to carry out what's the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history, it was a cold and calculated act. His defense lawyers said Cruz was mentally ill and brain damaged as a result of his mother using drugs and alcohol when she was pregnant. She asked the jury to show mercy, even though she admitted he did not have any for his victims.
Scientists at Stanford School of Medicine have successfully transplanted human brain tissue into rats. The experiment could help researchers better understand autism, schizophrenia and other neurological conditions. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The experiment started 7 years ago when researchers began growing simplified human brain cells in the lab, then injected them into the brains of baby rats. According to their results, which were published in the journal Nature on Wednesday, the rats incorporated the human cells into their own brain tissue, which then seemed to guide the rats' movements. The researchers say the rats didn't show signs of health issues related to the experiment, and they hope further studies, which could use the brain cells from people with autism and other conditions, could help them better understand the biology underlying those disorders.
Business and economic data out on Wednesday suggests that inflation in the US shows few signs of cooling. Wholesale prices ticked up in September, despite the US Federal Reserve's efforts to cool rising costs. FSN's William Denslow reports from New York.
The producer price index ticked up 0.4% in September, exceeding the 0.2% rise many analysts had expected. This metric's a gauge on the price that companies in the US get for the services and products they make. Inflation in the US is currently up at around 40-year highs, with PPI now up 8.5% compared to a year ago. The Federal Reserve has raised interest rates 5 times already this year in a bid to curb price pressures. Analysts expect the Fed to again raise rates by 75 basis points at the central bank's next meeting in early November. The closely watched Consumer Price Index is due out on Thursday. William Denslow, New York.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to join the discussion. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And coming up, of course, next year, it's still a long way off, but people are already, excited about it. They're already booking sites at Rogers Campground, and it is coming up. It's 8 months out now. Yeah, just a little over 8 months. June the 15th through June the 18th, the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground. There's no ticket. The Porcupine Freedom Festival has tickets, and it's probably going to sell out this year, just like it's done the last 2 years. But Fork Fest requires no tickets. All you have to do is book your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground. That's June the 15th through June the 18th. That gets you in, and you can go to forkfest.party if you want to connect with other Forkfesters. That's the unofficial website. There's a Forkfest Telegram channel that's bridged to the unofficial Forkfest Matrix chat. So there's all sorts of ways for you to connect with other people who are attending. That's June the 15th through the 18th at Rogers Campground. Find out more about it at forkfest.party. That's forkfest.party. Let's keep going with the phones. We have Jamie on the line from Alabama. Jamie, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I heard this lady said something about if a mother kills her baby, it's between the mom and the doctor if she wants to get an abortion.
You're breaking up a little bit there. So to reiterate, you heard someone say something like, if a woman wants to get an abortion, that decision is between her and her doctor. Is that?
Oh, okay. I thought she said her and the baby.
Is that correct? Okay. I mean, it sounds about right. To me, right?
Yeah. Hey, will you do this service for me? Yeah. Okay, I want this service done. That's about it.
Do you disagree?
Yeah,
Do you think
really.
Do you think it involves another party? Jamie?
I guess so. I mean...
We didn't fully get your answer there. You may need to step outside to get a better signal. I'm not trying to cut you off or anything like that. You just don't seem to have a very good signal with wherever you happen to be at the moment. So we don't know what exactly you said as the answer.
Is that better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I heard, that it should be between the mother and the doctor. It's kind of like if someone killed someone, it should be between the murderer and the victim.
I mean, I think it's a little different than killing someone. I mean, in a way, yes, it is, but they're not. So if the woman was to have a natural miscarriage or a spontaneous abortion, that's the medical term for a miscarriage, if that were to happen before a certain point, like in the first trimester, the baby wouldn't be compatible for life if the baby was born that early. So I think that's personally like where my threshold for abortion is. If the baby could be born and would survive and it was terminated, then yes, that's absolutely murder. But if it's, early on and they're not even really a fully formed person yet, I just can't really call that murder personally.
Well, they were saying something like if the baby was completely out and laying on the metal plate or whatever, the mother should decide if I want to keep it, feed it and everything, or just let it die.
No, I don't think if it's out that it's even a question that you should be allowed to kill it or not. But if it's in your body, I don't believe in slavery, so therefore I don't believe in forcing someone to carry a baby to term.
Exactly.
But if it's out of their body, you shouldn't be able to kill it.
Jamie, thank you so much for the call tonight. I think I've never heard anyone suggest otherwise, right? Except maybe Mark Edge.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of like very conservative or religious people.
No, I meant to say that I've never heard anyone suggest otherwise, that you should be able to kill a baby that's outside of a body.
Oh,
just
really?
Sitting there.
Oh,
Mark Edge, he was being Mark when he said it, right? He's like, I don't care if you want to take a billy club to your baby or whatever it was that he said. He was like, that's not my business. That was his position on abortion. It's like, he doesn't care if you want to beat your kid to death with a 2x4.
The 24-month abortions.
Yeah. He was saying something to that effect. But other than that, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that you should be able to, terminate a life that exists independently of another human being. And that, as I understand it, that's where the abortion disagreement comes in, because, this isn't a thing, a life that exists independently of another human being. It's 100% dependent on another human being.
And once it's born, everyone has the option to give a baby away for adoption. So therefore, you shouldn't be like, oh, well, I don't want to take care of it, so I'm going to kill it, because you have the option to very easily give it away.
Excellent point. So we also have Tia on the line from Oregon. Tia, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm just calling because I listened to the podcast, so I was listening to the one from last night, and I heard Aria say that she supports the Greater Idaho movement, and I just want to know why, because to me it's not at all the same as like what you guys are doing in New Hampshire. It's I'm really against it, so I want to know why you guys support it.
I don't.
What is that?
What is the Greater Idaho movement? I hate saying that if I said I supported it last night, but I don't remember.
Well, it's like a secessionist movement, I guess. Like, in a way, I wouldn't say that it is, because it's kind of like people in the state of Idaho and people in the state of Oregon want to absolve part of like rural Oregon and have it be part of Idaho, because Idaho is more similar to that like rural Oregon area.
Yeah, what's wrong with that if people want that?
Well, people don't want that. What I'm saying is, if you want that, why don't you move to Idaho? Like, I literally picked up my life and moved away from Idaho to get away from it. Like, I can't imagine having the audacity to think that I should just be absolved into another state because people are too lazy to kind of pick up and move like I did.
Well, and it is kind of strange. I just looked up the Greater Idaho Movement because I had never heard of that before, and it's just strange that they even want to do that they want to take over a part of Oregon. I just don't really understand why.
It's because I live here. Like, I moved from Idaho, and there's a big difference between the Portland people and the rest of the state. Obviously, like the farming stuff, it makes sense to me why maybe farmers would want to be part of Idaho. But I moved here because I like weed and I wanted to grow weed. So why don't they move to Idaho?
I don't know, and I don't recall weighing in. If you ask me, this is the first time I've ever heard of the Greater Idaho Movement. I don't recall hearing about it previously. If I said something that sounded like it supported, I may have in fact said something that supported it. I don't recall. It was likely based on something a caller told me about it, and I was just basing the assessment off of what that caller said. I don't know. You say I spoke out and supported this thing. I don't have any memory of this thing.
Well, you were just talking about the different secessionist movements, and I just don't.
Are you sure this was me?
Maybe you were just quoting somebody and I misunderstood. But I don't believe that the Idaho one is at all the same as what you guys are trying to do in New Hampshire, because it's a state trying to absolve me in my state into their state.
Annexation is definitely not the same as just like secession. That's really weird. I've never heard of it personally. And I would say that if the people of Oregon mostly want to join Idaho, they should be free to. But if, like you're saying, most people don't, then that's weird that Idaho would want to take it. That's weird.
That is weird. Thank you so much for the call.
Really weird too.
Yeah.
Well, I want to also say that I don't really think that it's as feasible as what you guys are trying to do, because even if Oregonians wanted to be in Idaho, Idaho doesn't want Oregon, So what are you going to do about that? Like, you'd have to have both people consent, and nobody is, so it's just a bunch of...
Yeah, thank you so much for the call tonight, Tia. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. There is more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. That's what the readers of freedomsphoenix.com get every day. freedomsphoenix.com, constantly providing the information, the real news about government policies, and the real relationship we all have with the coercive government. The real condition of the economy, innovations in technology, breakthroughs in energy, health, and computer science. Learn the truth well before it's admitted to in the lamestream media. The corporate media, nothing more than distributors of government propaganda, but now there's an alternative. freedomsphoenix.com. Constant news updates on the issues that affect your life in the most important ways. With liberty and property under constant attack, freedomsphoenix.com provides the understanding behind the propaganda, and it encourages the participation of its readers. Go to freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. freedomsphoenix.com. The revolution between the ears has already happened.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airways. But we're pretty much out of time for tonight. But you can hang out with us in the meantime on our social media server at social.freetalklive.com. That's where you can find the many of the hosts of the show hanging out. It's our Twitter clone, or it's not a Twitter clone. Mastodon is similar to Twitter, and it could be characterized as a Twitter clone, and it behaves the same way. It allows you to post things and like things and reshare things and all of that great stuff. And it's pretty cool, and you don't have to worry about getting banned or anything like that. That's social.freetalklive.com. Now, there's so much to get into tonight that we didn't get into that I wanted to get into, like Elon Musk saying he's not going to bring Starlink to Crimea because he thinks it would upset Russia. Worth talking about, but not going to get into it. Of course, the LP, the Libertarian Party, is going downhill, according to one guy. Also, we're talking about, well, amusing to talk about. There's Biden, Saudi Arabia, all of this stuff, and the UN vote that Russia wants to be had in the UN to determine whether or not countries think that Russia should be condemned for their actions in Ukraine. Russia wants the vote to be secret, but most of the countries wanted it to be public.
That's weird. Why do the other countries want it to be public? You would think they'd be like, oh, good, I don't want to have to put it on the record.
I don't know, but that's what I would have expected as well. The United Nations, because Russia's scary, right? And I would expect some of these smaller countries to not want to be on the record as, speaking out against Russia, but evidently not. The United Nations General Assembly voted on Monday to reject Russia's call for the 193-member body to hold a secret vote later this week on whether to condemn Moscow's move to annex 4 partially occupied regions in Ukraine. Instead, the General Assembly, that's just what they call all of the nations in the United Nations, decided with 107 votes in favor that it would hold a public vote, not a secret ballot, on a draft resolution that condemns Russia's referendum and the, quote, attempted illegal annexation. So diplomats said the vote on the answer would likely be on Wednesday or Thursday. It doesn't look like it was today, so look for that tomorrow. I'm interested. I'm legitimately interested to see the results of this. Where do countries within the United Nations actually stand on this? Because 107 of them wanted to make sure that the vote was public. And that's a shocking amount of courage that I don't expect from ambassadors and statists under most circumstances.
Well, I guess it sounds like they want to know what the other countries are seeing. So they want to know who's on their side and who's not. No secrets.
That makes sense. Only 13 countries on Monday opposed holding a public vote on the draft resolution. Another 39 countries abstained, and the remaining countries, including Russia and China, did not vote. So Russia and China did not even vote on whether or not to have a public vote on this thing, but Russia did want a secret one. It's all very confusing. Russia had argued that Western lobbying meant that it may be tough if positions are expressed publicly. That's why Russia wanted them to be secret, evidently. During the meeting on Monday, Russia's UN ambassador, Vasily Nebenzia, questioned the push to condemn Moscow. What does this have to do with peace and security or trying to settle conflicts? Said Nebenzia, describing it as yet one more step towards division and escalation, which I'm sure is not something the absolute majority of states in this room need. After the General Assembly decided on Monday that it would hold a public vote on the draft resolution, Russia immediately tried to get the body to reconsider the issue, but it overwhelmingly failed. So that's why, at least, Russia is saying they wanted it to be secret, because the United States exerts a lot of pressure. And if it finds out that, Israel, for example, or Germany or whatever Western ally is in support of Russia or doesn't vote to support Russia or doesn't vote to condemn Russia, then they're an enemy of the United States. So that would be why. And that could be a relatively big deal. The world is dividing itself, and the United States is learning. I find it pretty amusing, but most people, a lot of Americans don't. The United States is learning that it's not the king of the playground anymore. It can't just say, look, this is the way we're doing it, and I said so, and everyone will go along with it. That's the way it was in the past, but now the United States they're not the kings anymore. So just because they want a thing doesn't mean it's going to happen. Russia also has to be considered now, and China has to be considered. And the United States, they've been the world's only superpower for such a long time that they can't share the space with anyone else. They believe that it's their God-given right to rule the earth, and they're not going to adjust to the new reality, I don't think. Like Saudi Arabia here and the OPEC thing, where this top Senate Democrat is vowing to block all future arms sales to Saudi Arabia, and that's great, right? But the concept here of Saudi Arabia having the courage to stand up and say, look, we don't really care. We're not selling you more oil. And for them to actually stand by that's new, right? Yeah. The Democratic chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee pledged late Monday to block all future U.S. weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. And again, his motives here are terrible, right? He just wants Saudi Arabia to be good little submissive partners again, or whatever it is he wants for Saudi Arabia. But if he's actually going to, stop selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, which is enabling the war crimes and the crimes against humanity in Yemen,
which your government, America has been giving them guns for this thus far, but not if they piss them off.
Yeah, they've been giving and selling these things but now they're like, no, because of OPEC's decision to cut oil production and push up gas prices. Senator Bob Menendez, who has veto power over foreign arms sales. Wow, I didn't expect a single individual was capable of doing this. So every arms sale that the United States military has ever made can ultimately, at least as long as he's been a politician, be pinned on him. He was the one who didn't say no, and he has the veto power to say no. What an immoral monster. He said in a statement that OPEC's plan to slash production by 2 million barrels a day was a decision to help underwrite Putin's war. Russia, an OPEC ally, stands to benefit from higher oil prices without having to reduce its own production. Presumably this is because so much of the oil that Russia uses comes internally and they don't buy it from OPEC. I don't know. The United States must immediately freeze all aspects of our cooperation with Saudi Arabia, including any arms sales and security cooperation beyond what is absolutely necessary. Well, he's got this catch-all in here, beyond what is absolutely necessary to defend U.S. personnel and interests. So that's a much weaker statement than it really should be, because almost everything falls into that for these. The reason that he's selling weapons to Saudi Arabia in the first place is because in his warped, evil understanding of the world, doing so somehow helps American interests and protects U.S. personnel. That's genuinely what he believes. So he's not going to stop selling them anything as a result of this.
And that statement is up for interpretation. That could literally mean anything. I would say zero.
Right.
But they would probably say, billions. As
chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I will not greenlight any cooperation with Riyadh until the kingdom I'm assuming that's the king of Saudi Arabia, until the kingdom reassesses its position with respect to the war in Ukraine. Enough is enough. With his statement, Menendez joined progressive lawmakers such as Senator Bernie Sanders, another war hawk. As I understand it, Bernie Sanders is a war hawk because a lot of the Raytheon facilities are in Vermont. Maybe it could be Lockheed Martin.
I think it's Raytheon.
It's one of the two. I don't remember exactly which. So they get a lot of money from the federal government, a lot of jobs, and all of that great stuff going to Vermont because of
the anti-war
all of the wars.
hippies.
Yes. All of the anti-war hippies are producing bombs and stuff that, the U.S. government is using. And it's a mess, right? It's the U.S. government. So, of course, it's a mess. On Sunday, Senator Richard Blumenthal announced legislation that would immediately halt all U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Last week, 3 House Democrats introduced a bill that would require the removal of U.S. troops and missile defense systems from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, a leading member of the OPEC cartel. Look, I'm all for this. If this is what it takes for the United States to close all of these foreign military bases and to bring all of its troops on us, you know what? Maybe we don't actually need missile defense systems at the United Arab Emirates. If this is what it takes, I'm okay with that.
I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't either because they're already hedging their bets, right? Like, if this doesn't directly help American personnel or whatever, or American interests. But the reason they have the missile defense system in the United Arab Emirates is because they've convinced themselves that it helps American interests. So, yeah, I'm with you. It sounds good, but I don't expect anything to change. We're out of time for tonight. You can hang out with us in the meantime over on, again, our social media server, social.freetalklive.com.
Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron.